What if someone close to you secretly hated you? Not the loud kind of hate, not betrayal you can point to, but the kind that lingers in the space between their words. That flickers in their smile. That lives in the silence when you needed their voice. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But what if that fate is their quiet resentment? What if the very person who once cheered for you is now hoping you fall without ever saying a word? You tell them your good news, a promotion, a new relationship, a dream finally coming true. They say all the right things, they smile, but something feels off. Their words land flat, their energy pulls away. At first you explain it away. Maybe they're tired and distracted. But it happens again and again. You begin to notice the delays, the absence, the way they show up for everyone else but hesitate when it's your turn. You start to feel it not just emotionally but physically. A tightening in your chest, a cold tension in the air. A growing voice inside you that whispers something isn't right. That voice is trying to tell you this is not your imagination. This is a pattern, a performance. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't stab you in the back. It hugs you, smiles, and walks away just before you fall. Seneca warned us long ago, envy is the adversary of the fortunate. Not just envy from enemies, from friends, from lovers. From people who once prayed for your success until it started to arrive. Sometimes their resentment isn't even about you. It's about the parts of themselves they buried and now have to face every time you walk into the room. And here's where it gets harder. They might not even know they hate you. Because we're trained to wear masks. To say I'm happy for you with clenched teeth. To say that's amazing with eyes that flicker away. Jung called this the persona, the face we present to the world, the role we play. But behind that mask lives the shadow. The unspoken, the unacceptable, the hidden, and it leaks. There's a pattern to it, a choreography of denial. They disappear when you succeed. They remember your failures like scripture. They make jokes that feel more like small cuts. They ask questions that sound like concern but land like doubt. You've seen this before, maybe with a sibling, a mentor, a friend you grew up with. You rise and they shrink away. You shine and they squint. There's an old fable in Eastern storytelling about a man who planted a tree that bore golden fruit. His neighbors praised him, celebrated his harvest. But one of them began to visit at night, clipping branches, saying to himself, "I'm only helping it grow evenly." Years later, the tree still stood, but bore no more fruit. The man wept, the neighbor offered condolences. But inside he smiled. Not all harm is violent, some of it is subtle, thoughtful, slow. And the ones who cause it might still call you friend. So, if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling smaller, colder, less certain, don't dismiss it. Don't second-guess your knowing. This is how hidden hatred works. It cloaks itself in civility. It buries its claws in kind words. It thrives in relationships where love has become a memory and resentment has learned how to perform it. You're not imagining it, you're remembering, you're seeing clearly. And in this video, we're going to talk about what no one wants to name. The signs someone close to you secretly hates you. Carl Jung believed the most dangerous parts of us are the ones we hide. He called it the shadow, the unconscious self that carries everything we repress. Envy, rage, shame, potential, power. The parts we deny so thoroughly, we forget they're even ours. But the shadow doesn't disappear, it projects. And the closer someone is to you, the more likely they'll cast that projection onto your life. So when someone close to you starts to subtly hate you, it's not always because of something you did. It's because you became the mirror they were trying to avoid. Your confidence echoes their self-doubt. Your success exposes their regrets. Your light makes their unhealed wounds visible. And their unconscious, threatened and ashamed, starts to punish the source of that reflection. That punishment doesn't look like cruelty, it looks like silence, withdrawal, minimization. It looks like clapping slowly when the room is already cheering. It looks like, I'm happy for you, but this is projection. Jung described it as a defense mechanism of the psyche. What we cannot accept in ourselves, we unconsciously push on to others. But we don't stop there. We also wear masks. Jung called this the persona, the socially acceptable identity we craft to belong. It's the smile we wear at dinner, the performance of care. The "I'm so proud of you" said through gritted teeth. And because the mask is convincing, even they may not know they've turned. They might still believe they love you. They might still show up, still comment, still check in. But it's not love anymore, it's an obligation, a habit. A mask made of memory. That's why your intuition stirs. That's why their presence no longer comforts. Because what was once real has become a role. Jung also spoke of the anima and animus, our internal images of the ideal feminine and masculine. We project these inner figures onto people we admire, desire, or depend on. And when they no longer meet that image, when they reveal themselves as whole, imperfect, free, we don't just lose the illusion. We feel betrayed by it. So your growth isn't just unsettling, it's offensive. Your authenticity isn't just inconvenient, it's treason. And their reaction? It's not always anger. It's avoidance, critique, passive disconnection. You feel them pulling away, not because you failed them, but because you freed yourself. Nietzsche once said, in individuals, insanity is rare, in groups it is the rule. But what he didn't say is that the smallest group, a relationship, can become its own unconscious system, a shared illusion. A place where two people agree not to look too closely because truth might break the spell. And when you break that spell, when you become too real, too whole, too alive, you threaten everything they refuse to face in themselves. So they retreat, they smile. And the shadow smiles with them. But now you see it. Not with judgment, with clarity. Because the shadow they won't own is not your responsibility to carry. And the love they offer through a mask is not the love you need. There's a kind of harm that doesn't break you with cruelty. It praises you, it hugs you, it hands you a gift with a smile, while quietly hoping you won't open it. This is the harm that comes dressed in love. What Carl Jung would call shadow in its most deceptive form. Not hatred with a snarl, hatred with manners. You felt it. You tell them your dream is becoming real. And they say, that's amazing, I'm so happy for you. But the words land sideways, their smile doesn't reach their eyes. Their presence feels thinner than it used to. They're still in your life, but it feels like they've stepped back just out of reach. This isn't indifference, it's dissonance. And it's not a new pattern. There's a tale buried in the Eastern Highlands passed quietly through mothers and daughters. A girl born with a voice so golden it could charm crows from trees. Her mother praised her in front of neighbors. She sings even better than I ever did. But at night, when no one watched, she closed every window. Told her the world is cruel to girls who shine too loudly. And over time the girl stopped singing, not from shame but from love. From a desire not to wound the woman who gave her her voice and also couldn't bear to hear it. That is the poisoned gift, praise given with a hidden cost. Support that demands you stay small to keep it. James Hillman once wrote, "We wound with love when we cannot stand to see someone fulfill the unlived life in ourselves." And Jung echoed this. The shadow is not necessarily always evil. It also contains undeveloped positive qualities. So when someone resents you, it's often because you're becoming touched a light they extinguished in themselves. Their love becomes laced with contradiction. Their support arrives with silence attached. They offer you kindness, but it leaves a bruise. You feel it in phrases like, "Just don't let it change you." "You're lucky it's working out. Don't forget who was there for you." At first you interpret it as caution, later as control. Eventually you realize it's grief, not yours, theirs. Grief for the self they might have been. Grief for the dreams they buried before they had a name. And you? You were the resurrection they didn't ask for. You made those dreams stir, and so now they smile but mourn. This is how closeness turns to corrosion, not because they stopped loving you, but because your light demanded they meet the parts of themselves they abandoned. You did nothing wrong. You didn't gloat. You didn't outshine. You simply bloomed. But to the one who never dared to plant their seed, your flower looks like a threat. So they give you a gift, words that sound like love. Support that smells like guilt, and you try to unwrap it. But there's always something inside that tells you, don't grow too much. You'll miss the first signs, because they come disguised as normal. They laugh, but it's a second too late. They say they're proud, but never post your wins. They're at your party, but standing just far enough away to miss the speech. Carl Jung taught that we all carry within us the parts of ourselves we cannot bear to face. And when we are unwilling to meet those parts, we will resent anyone who lives them freely. That's why their withdrawal doesn't make sense. That's why their warmth goes cold the moment your life catches light. At first you don't want to see it. You tell yourself, maybe they're just going through something. But eventually the pattern is too sharp to ignore. They forget your birthday. Then remind you of theirs. They say you're doing amazing things. Then follow it with, but don't forget where you came from. And slowly, their kindness starts to feel like a correction. This isn't just passive aggression. This is a fracture in the soul of your connection. In the Jewish Midrash, there's a story of Cain and Abel few people mention. It's said that Cain didn't strike Abel because he hated him. He struck him because Abel's offering was accepted. Because Abel's presence reminded Cain of his own inadequacy. Abel didn't brag, he just brought something honest. And it was enough to shatter the bond. This is the secret hatred, born not from your pride, but from their pain. From your freedom, not your flaw. Psychologists call this ambient abuse, a slow, almost invisible erosion of dignity. It sounds like it must be nice to have all that time. Some of us don't have those kinds of connections. Not everyone gets to chase dreams, you know. They frame it as realism. But what they're really saying is, your life makes me feel smaller. They may not even know why they're doing it, they just feel it. Your joy? A disruption. Your glow? A glare. Your success? A silent indictment. So they do what feels safe. They shrink you in conversation. They disappear when you're celebrated. They joke about you, but never laugh with you. And the betrayal is not what they did. It's what they stopped doing. They stopped cheering, stopped seeing. Stop trying. They still call you friend, but they no longer call you forward. And deep down, the part of you that always knew how to listen knows. They haven't left your life, but they've stepped out of your corner. And now you're fighting to grow in a space that quietly wants you smaller. Not because of who you are, but because of who you dared to become. They'll insist they don't hate you, and they'll believe it. Because to them, hate looks loud, sharp, obvious. Not like what's happening here, not like this growing distance. Not like the hesitations after your wins, not like the warmth that's turned to something colder and quiet. Carl Jung wrote, "The shadow is that hidden, repressed, for the most part inferior and guilt-laden personality whose ultimate ramifications we do not know." They don't know, but you feel it. They don't hate your success, they hate what it shows them. About themselves, about the life they didn't chase, about the dreams they let collapse inside the safe walls of realism. Your glow doesn't offend them, your glow reflects them. And the reflection burns, it starts subtly. A missed call on your birthday, a vague comment under your proudest post. A shift in tone that happens too often to ignore. You tell them, you're finally happy. And they sigh, must be nice. You share good news, and the silence that follows is louder than any applause they ever gave. This isn't indifference, it's psychic self-preservation. Jung's student, James Hollis, once said, "We are not who we think we are. We are who we are afraid to be." So when you become what they feared to attempt, it doesn't inspire them. It exposes them. There's an old African parable passed quietly from storyteller to storyteller. A man plants a tree that bears fruit no one in the village has ever seen. He offers it freely, some accept it, some walk away. But one childhood friend comes each night scratching its roots, loosening the soil, whispering, "You forgot us." Years later, when the tree collapses, the villagers mourn, but the friend, he smiles, not out of cruelty, out of relief. This is what happens when your life becomes a symbol of someone else's loss. Or you become something they can't digest. So they sabotage you passively, lovingly, unconsciously. They rewrite the story so they can stay safe. They tell themselves you're different now, that success changed you, that you stopped being humble, that you stopped being theirs. And maybe you did, because maybe you grew too far to still belong to a story that required you to be small. They loved the version of you that stayed behind. The version that didn't challenge their narrative. The version that apologized for shining. But now you're bigger, brighter, whole, and the shadow they've never owned has no idea what to do with you. So they smile, they clap, they stand in the back, arms crossed, and say things like, "I just hope they remember where they came from." And in the name of love, they leave paper cuts across your growth. They're not evil, they're in pain. But you can't shrink to fit their healing timeline. You can't dim just to protect the part of them that never left the cave. You can't keep trading your becoming for their comfort. You didn't betray them, you just stopped betraying yourself. You saw it, maybe not all at once, but piece by piece. You saw the way they flinched at your joy. You saw the smile that never quite reached their eyes. You felt the space widen after each success, like you were walking further away from someone who kept insisting they were right beside you. At first you told yourself to be grateful, that not everyone has to clap, that real love is quiet. But this wasn't quiet, this was absence dressed as loyalty. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And the darkness you just made conscious was theirs, the hidden resentment, the subtle sabotage, the conditional support that only lived as long as you stayed manageable. And now, you're free. You are no longer confused by kindness that stings, no longer twisting yourself into something smaller so they can feel bigger, no longer shrinking your laughter, softening your wins, downplaying your joy. You've stopped apologizing for your light, because you finally understand they didn't hate you, they hated the mirror, and you were the clearest reflection they'd ever stood before. Your courage exposed their hesitation. Your healing exposed their avoidance. Your becoming made them face the question they've been dodging for years. What if I stopped blaming the world and just began? But they didn't begin, you did. And they resented you for it, not because they're cruel, but because their shadow was louder than their love. So now you release them with grief, with compassion, with clarity. Because true love doesn't compete. True friendship doesn't flinch when you rise. True closeness doesn't withdraw when you start becoming the person you were always meant to be. This is your liberation, not revenge. Not confrontation, clarity. You see what they never said? You feel what they couldn't admit. You honor what you always knew. And now you choose yourself. If this video gave language to something you've carried in silence, say it below. Comment the moment you knew someone didn't love the version of you that finally bloomed. And if you're still standing in the middle of the betrayal, if you're still questioning, still shrinking, still hoping to be understood, this is your sign. Don't wait for their permission. Don't stay just because the memory was beautiful. You are allowed to outgrow what taught you how to survive. You're allowed to become what their fear couldn't handle. You are allowed to leave the room they only wanted you in if you stayed quiet. And if this spoke to you, share it. Someone out there is still trying to explain why love hurts when they succeed. Help them name it. Help them find their way out. Because this time you're not going back. You are not shrinking. You're not apologizing. You saw the signs. You believed your intuition. And now you're walking in the direction your soul has always pointed. And you are not alone.